It's great to see everyone here today and happy to kick off. We're going to talk about humanizing AI and insights. And so since we're going to talk about humanizing that, we're going to introduce ourselves first so you get to know the people today. So hi, I'm Dennis. I work at Havas Health. I run our global customer experience practice and do lots of other things around the network. And I get the pleasure of moderating this terrific panel today. So we'll just ask them to say a quick hello in terms of who they are and what they do. So Justine.
I'm Justine Feron. Loud enough? Yes, okay. I am the Chief Strategy Officer of Havas New York. Glad to be with you guys.
And I'm Chad Reynolds, founder and CEO of Vurvey Labs. I think my picture's behind me. Is it? Yeah. Okay, cool. We were trying to match up, so we didn't confuse you.
He's got the hair perfect, too.
I'm Lea Karam. I'm a behavioral scientist and the founder and CEO of Mindscope. It's a behavioral consultancy that specializes in tech, culture, and commerce. And I'm very excited to be here with Havas and Vurvey Labs to humanize AI per se, or try to, obviously, because we've got the same ethos and mindsets.
Outstanding. So thanks, everyone. And hopefully you got a chance to check out Portraits of Desire. If you didn't, on your way out or on your way to get some water to cool off, because it's a little warm today, check out, we have 3 of our portraits available that you can interact with, which is really interesting. And I think that's really foundational. What we're going to talk about today is what does it mean to really supercharge human behavior with AI? So Chad, I'm going to ask you to give people a little bit about what's behind the Portraits of Desire, what's kind of the secret sauce that Vurvey is contributing there.
Yeah, so just to share a little bit of background on me so you know where this is coming from. So my mom, well, you always start with AI talk about your mom, but she used to work at Procter & Gamble. So if you've used Crest and Tide and all these different brands, she worked there for 40 plus years in product research. And so I was the guinea pig. So from the time I was 6 years old, I would get into the shower and have shampoo bottle A, shampoo bottle B, and then a notepad on the sink to let her know if I got a rash or not. And
typical, right? I mean,
I just fell in love with research and involving people in the ideas that you build. And so that kind of kicked off a 20-plus year career of trying to interview consumers all over the world. And then had this kind of breakthrough maybe 8 years ago, which was realizing that I can't be in every single room. I can't interview every single person. But what if you could use AI to actually interview the world? And what if you could use it to create with the world? So that kicked off this 5-year journey we've been on, which is to build a new type of AI model. So compared to language models that you guys use probably every day with ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, these are all amazing tools based off of our language. What we tried to do was to build an entirely new model called people models, which are all about who you and I are as people, how we behave, how we see the world. And so we're pioneering this new frontier of what does human AI look like? And so we use this model to help create some of the portraits that you can interact with up there.
And Justine, when you think about that, you're not just reading the research, you're interacting with it. I mean, how do people interpret that? What does it mean, particularly for brands, as they start to think about insights with that different type of interaction?
I mean, I think kind of the beauty of it is you don't have to interpret it. Like, I think often a research report, when it's revelatory, comes with the downside of coming in the form of like a 50-page report that you then have the needle in the haystack moment with. And the sort of beauty about this experience, which I tried out this morning, is that rather than having to sift through an enormous amount of stuff and therefore interpret it, you just talk to it, to the disarmingly good-looking AI portraits. Was that on purpose?
It had nothing to do with that.
It feels not accidental. And just have a conversation with them, and then through the banter comes the insight rather than through the laborious interpretation.
And Lea, from a human behavior perspective, right, what does that mean when you can actually interact with the research and the insights versus just having to read it? How does that change things?
I mean, we talk so much about passive consumption, passive interactions, and humans, we're meant to create, not to consume. We're meant to participate. We're meant to interact. People think that they create our economy rising, is because of, creators cracking the algorithm or something. But actually, when we look at it from a media psychology lens, it's actually their resonance, their relevance, their participatory formats that they create inherently. That's why you're going to hear a lot about, think like a creator, engage like a creator, develop like a creator. So psychologically, it creates this level of involvement. We call this the IKEA effect in behavioral science for a reason, because you build something, it's somewhat complicated, or it could not be complicated, but when there's friction, then there's involvement, and that's where you actually can create a sort of behavior that resonates. We call that in behavioral science as well encoding and decoding of information. If you're able to support a unique decoding of information, then you're a step ahead from everyone else who's doing basic things. And in this industry, right now especially, we have so many tools at our disposal, but it doesn't mean that they're the right tools. More data doesn't equal more insight. So I definitely recommend creating more of those participatory behaviors, because they go back to our inherent human needs to connect and to create. And when you build for this, then you can't go as wrong as if you optimize yourself into what I call sameness and just recreate the same broadcasting strategy to an audience instead of building a community around your brand and get them to engage with you and co-create with you.
So the portraits are called Portraits of Desire, right? And so, and we'll tease, I know tomorrow there's a pretty exciting, here at the Havas Cafe, press release where we're going to talk about some new research. But a lot of brands right now, Justine, are still struggling to grow meaningfully, right? What's the problem? What are they missing right now that's causing that stagnation?
Yeah, I think not to scoop the big moment tomorrow, but one of the things that will come up when you do all see the report is indifference as an important sort of, and honestly increasingly fraught metric. Most people are indifferent to most brands most of the time, and it makes sense why it's, even if it's just like in retrospect thinking about the last 15 years, we've gotten really good at optimization, right? We optimize for performance, we optimize our audiences, we optimize basically every facet of the marketing experience. But it can cause this real regression to a mean where everybody with access to the same tools in the same way ends up making kind of the same old shit. And then you have the sensation as a human being, which I often have, which is I stand at a grocery store looking at 100 different kinds of pasta sauces, struggling to discern what any meaningful differences between these sauces. So I think that it makes sense that this is happening, that people feel the sense of stagnation or indifference, or I think of it as sort of the meh, don't really care feeling that most of us feel most of the time.
And the opposite of meh is desire, right? And so, Lea, can you talk a little bit about what are the three drivers of desire, and what does it mean when they actually start to work together?
Awesome. I think to Justine's point, the opposite of love is indifference, right? So this is like a saying that's anchored within society. If you go back to sociology, all of the metaphors that we hear about are actually based on sociologies and how, different generations interacted with each other. So this is exactly why desire is so important. And desire doesn't happen overnight. As Justine said as well, we have so many tools out there. Everyone wants instant brand love. Everyone wants instant connection. That's not how it actually happens. It takes a lot of time, especially in our modern economy, to build that trust. As you said, we have so many options. So what differentiates you from someone else? So what we've seen in the research is there are three different facets of desire. It's basically anchored in behavioral economics and behavioral science. So when you look deeper into it, you can start with attachment. That's kind of the first one. At Mindscope, we call it the motivational pull. And I always say this motivational pull is the price of entry to the brain. How do you filter yourself in as a brand? How do you create what we call, it's a behavioral word, but I love it. You're going to hear more of it, semiotics. Generational symbols, mythological symbols, the moments that you look at, you're like, wait, I can see myself in this. This is different. It could be visual, with the amazing work that you do. It could be sensory. It could be both. It could be anything that pulls you in. At Mindscope, it's a thing that I keep speaking about, but I will keep speaking about it. We retermed attention spans as filtering spans, because if we go and design for attention spans, we add fuel to the fire. We'll create shorter and shorter, and at the end of the day, that's not good. We've seen the results of this on brand value and brand exchange. So we called it filtering spans. We changed the semantics because we found that actually audiences can give you attention. They co-create They engage with you, they engage with creators, they engage with your brand, they create content about your content. So they filter you in if there's a symbol that excites them, and then you can start to create that kind of attraction, this instant pull. That's kind of the first one. The second one is affinity. So yeah, attraction, affinity. Affinity, we say that it's kind of the brand fluency. When a brand and a customer, when they can speak to each other, when they speak the same language, when the moments where the brand shows up in those moments, the moments matter, the moments are great, the moments are fluent, the ideologies, the values, the brand ethos. And then the last one is attachment. That's the last one. Attachment is very important. As a behavioral scientist, trust me, habits is so underused in our industry. Honestly, the power of habits, the power that habits can create. So habits is basically attachment. It's when you reinforce it, you reinforce that connection based on that attraction, which is number one, and affinity, which is number two. And it's really exciting to see this come to life, and brands and the brand value being at the forefront, because it has a ripple effect on performance values as well.
I will say, as a long-suffering Knicks fan, no one understands desire more than I do. Go Knicks!
Congrats.
But Chad, if you think about what Lea just talked about, how can AI actually bring a different perspective or supercharge that?
Yeah, I mean, we are feeling machines. The way that we interact with the world is very visceral. It's really a complex structure of all these identities that we believe to be true of ourselves and of the experiences that we're walking through. So it explains sometimes, like, you put a cookie down in front of somebody. The stuff that's going through your head is like all these different identities battling one another of, like, are you going to take it or are you not? Are you looking at it? Are you like, where are you going next? Where did you come from? It's like all these different identities all playing out in the same time. And I think within AI today, it all gravitates towards the mean, right? So language models are meant to be a calculator for words. But when you look at all of us, you can't necessarily predict in a rational way what exactly we're going to do, because we are feeling machines. We're walking contradictions. You would do this, and then the next day you do something completely different. And it doesn't mean that either is wrong. It's just the context of that experience. There was something in your identity of how you chose that thing that, like, mattered to who you are, what you wanted to say at that moment. And so what we're trying to do is, rather than kind of gravitating to the mean, or build brands that all look the same, or it's like you go to an interesting restaurant and then you go to Nashville and you see the same exact restaurant and you're like, well, this doesn't feel different anymore. We need to design AI models that don't gravitate to the mean. They hold this human tension within them, that you can't rationalize what they're going to say because we're not rational.
So Lea, Chad just used the word predict, right? How does, back to your three drivers, how predictive are those when you analyze those from a behavioral science point of view, and how should a brand really think about that?
Extremely predictive. I mean, the brain is not a deliberation agent, it's a prediction agent. And once you understand that, you can build for it, because that's why I keep saying habits are so powerful, because habits take that deliberation away. So it's in the brain's natural state. So when you really understand what the drivers are and the prediction ecosystem that sits in someone's brain and within your audience as well, then you're a step closer to them, but also to predicting their next step. As Chad said, I mean, predictably irrational, right? Humans are not irrational. We're all social animals. We're paradoxes, but the beauty happens in that paradox. It happens in that debate. I mean, we're releasing an exclusive piece of work on Thursday with TikTok, so I can't really reveal everything now, but I can talk about it. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about when it came to this was the fact that we identified a really interesting contextual moment where things really happen. And that's where you understand the prediction set that sits in the mind of consumers. You don't push at them. You don't You don't go at them and just shout things at them. On the contrary, you're patient with them, you respect them and in those moments because you know where they're at, and then you build for them. And once you look at those platform ecosystems, it's fascinating for a modern behavioral scientist to see that actually emotions and cognitive moments can fail when context fails, when you don't design for the environment. We're in a really exciting time in the industry at the moment. I know there are a lot of changes, but the beauty happens in the changes, it happens in the transformation. And spoiler alert, human behavior hasn't changed that much. It's the only compass we have. Literally, we want connection, we want safety, we want reassurance. So if we go back to this and build around it and understand why they engage with us and why they come to us, then we're a step closer to really connecting with people within that prediction engine, which is essentially a contextual engine as well.
I want to build on this idea of changes, right? So Justine, now we have people models that can capture the nuances of human interaction. We have predictors of desire. How does this change what a marketer does in terms of a strategist, a brand marketer? What's different about their job going forward?
I'm glad you get this one.
So, I mean, I'm going to take the slightly like Pollyanna strategist approach. And I think it's really exciting for me as someone who does strategy for a living. It is like harkens the return of the insight as an important thing. So, for example, it's like, if I just wanted to do the same thing as everyone else using all the data available to me, you don't really need a good creative brief for that. But if you need to build desire, if you want people to feel attached to and affinity for and drawn in by a brand, well, then you have to ask yourself a different kind of question. So, like, for example, one of the brands I work on is Durex. And, you know, a brief about Durex for 18-year-old boys, which is what my team is currently working on, is going to be an interesting brief no matter what. But it's a much more interesting brief when you're asking yourselves questions like, what's the category interpretation of desire and how can we subvert it? Or what is the unmet need that people really desire? They're not saying it, but it's there that we could capitalize on. Or what is the thing about the brand that should drive desire but is buried and hidden right now? And those things make, if you can deliver on them, for much more interesting briefs. So I think as a strategist kind of marketer, to me, it sort of represents a big opportunity.
And what would you say about tools like Vurvey or research like the science of desire? How should a marketer start to use those differently in their jobs on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the research report taught me was about the compounding effects of these things. So that, you know, if you're just doing affinity, like, cool, but it's better if you're also doing attachment, it's better if you're also drawing people in, and that if you are using all three of the metrics of desire, you're going to be like 2 times more likely to grow. So then the way that I think about it is that marketers have an obligation to do these 3 things simultaneously. So one of our clients is JBL, for example, and they have partnerships with Benson Boone, and that's meant to make the brand as like culturally interesting as possible so that you're drawing people in from the beginning. But then, you know, we're also activating in pride and we're activating in sports because that's how affinity is born, through shared values. And then if attachment is about earning a place in people's everyday lives, it's about, you know, we have an open air headphone that's great for running because you can like hear your music, but it's safe because you're not blocking out the noise of the environment. And so all of those things happening separately is like cool. All those things happening simultaneously, to me, is one of the big lessons about how you apply all this, is that's where brands are really going to grow.
Yeah. And Lea, how are you seeing brands behave differently, use some of the research differently? What are some of the examples you're seeing to build on what Justine shared in terms of some tangible, you know, different approaches or use cases?
I mean, what was great in the report that, you know, we've helped with as well is the fact that the stages that you spoke about, that was a massive thing that we also wanted to insist on, because yeah, they do work in parallel stages because the human mind doesn't differentiate. So the brands that do this right actually put the human first. I mean, I'm quite biased as a behavioral scientist, but you're going to see, I was asked 2 weeks ago, you know, my opinion on like the future of marketing and the next generation and the jobs that are going to come into play, or that we should, and in my company, I want to enforce a new type of industry. And we need to think about cultural architecture. We need to think about semiotics. We need to think about, you know, an algorithmic kind of director experts that put the human first. So fundamentally, the brands that are doing really well at the moment, to be really honest, are tech brands, they are tech clients, because they are so, you know, we talked about this with Chad, you know, it's like tech companies, they're so inherently dynamic and they're so inherently built for those those shifts, that our technology lab is one of the most fascinating labs. We've got 3 labs, the tech one, the entertainment and culture one, and the commerce one. But our technology lab is the most dynamic one because tech brands are willing to change. They're willing to get ahead. They're willing to create, like Justine mentioned, those ecosystems, because it's not about campaign cycles anymore. Again, spoiler alert, it's not about this anymore because people hear about your brand before you even speak to them. So it's about those compounding moments that you can create. It's about understanding the different ecosystem that sits on each platform. When you go on Snapchat, for example, it's more about connecting with your friends and family. It's being creative. It's just creating a kind of more creative world for yourself. When you get on TikTok, you want to obviously get entertained. When you go to Reddit, you want to read some of those comments, but you also want to be in this inner circle where you feel seen inherently. So tech companies and those tech platforms, those entertainment giants and brands are really up there understanding people. We're not seeing it as much just yet with commerce brands, for instance. They are there, like companies like Vurvey Labs obviously are there to also support them. We're there to support them, Havas as well, but we need to make sure that we start creating that transformation piece. That's why a lot of our briefs turn from marketing briefs to organizational briefs. So the brands that are doing this right at the moment are the more tech-led brands because that's their ethos. They're used to this and they're used to those changes.
Outstanding, thank you. So, Chad, not every marketer is filling out checklists since they're 6 years old, but what examples are you seeing outside of the groundbreaking work we're doing at Havas Health with Vurvey?
Of course, yeah.
What other examples of companies, how are they applying these tools differently?
Yeah, so one of our large customers is Unilever. So they're building AI populations across every category in every market. So imagine, it used to be you would open a PowerPoint deck and see, meet Jane. Here's, her biography and some bullet points, and so that was a great starting point. But now we're able to bring Jane to life as kind of like some of these portraits of desire, but not just build a representative, but build thousands or millions of them. And so, to your point about like the transformation that's happening. Is it may have started out as insights was a function within a company because research was very hard.
Yep.
And so, but then everybody in the whole organization needed insight. And so I think what the transformation is happening is how do you create models where the PowerPoint isn't a deliverable? It's the people are. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that's happening is as we start with customers, they may start out with, hey, our ambition is to create with the world. So how do we create segments or populations and do research with them? What it's actually doing is starting to collapse this idea of insight into everybody's job. And so I know there's rigor around the methods and how you bring the data in, and we want to, we don't want to design for the mean. It's giving insight teams, I think, a new opportunity where they truly can be the orchestrators of innovation. And so, for companies like them or like a JP Morgan, where we're building out these like hard to reach individuals who never participate in research. So you can test policies and ideas and that. And the one I'm most excited about is, through the work we're doing, is what happens when you build patient populations, especially around rare disease and some others where, humans don't really want to talk about these things. We've proven that through the models, they actually are surfacing insights and ideas that we just don't want to talk about. And so what happens when you build patient populations, but then you also build like healthcare practitioner populations, and rather than ask research questions, you're putting objectives in front of them and letting them help create ideas together, where you and I are the observer in the room, and you can start to see what things are being created and why, and start to learn. And that puts us as humans in a really interesting juxtaposition because we've never been, we've been in workshops before, so you could see things happen in front of you, but not at scale. And so what happens when you build, we sometimes refer to what we're doing as kind of like building a SimCity for your brand, right? So you can see all these people and how they react. And the social dynamics around it. And so when you introduce different things into it, you are the observer where you can start to pull insights that happen over time or how different things emerge. And I think it's going to lead to the creation of new sciences that we don't even maybe have the words for just yet.
Yeah.
But it's a very exciting place to be in. But I think the beauty of what we've always connected on is it has to be powered by real people.
Right.
It can't just be powered by data. It's got to be powered by individuals who want to be a part of AI.
Yeah.
Where all of our data was taken from us, years ago, and so other people are monetizing it. And now it's our opportunity to actually speak into the models of the future because we have a vested stake in creating our own.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Chad mentioned opportunities, so I'm going to switch it. You had shared really good examples of current practices. Justine, what's something people aren't doing today that they should be from a marketer and someone running a brand? What's your recommendation on something they should be doing differently?
So there's another stat in the report about the potential that brands have, and that on average, brands are only meeting about 60% of their potential. And as I think about what a brand could do differently to close that gap, I think about this sort of embrace of the inherent emotionality of these three words. We talk about attraction and affinity and attachment, and you both talked about that's a high bar. It's not easy to do those things or to do them well. And I think that it is so tempting because we have the data, tech, and tools to so easily, let me give you an example. So I, in a beginner's mistake, brought a Dyson Airwrap to France with me and plugged it in and toasted it this morning. I'm down an Airwrap. And so in this moment of my particular life, Dyson doesn't need to do much to build my desire. They could tell me where the nearest Dyson store is and we're cool. But the me that's back at home would need a little more to be convinced to spend $650 on a hairdryer when you can buy a $20 one that arguably does the same thing. And I think that the easy move for brands is to do deploy all the tech and the tools and the targeting and do the same old thing that leads you to look like the same other 100 brands of lipstick or pasta sauce or hair dryers. It is infinitely harder still, even though we know now what the drivers are, to build desire, and yet I think worth it, ultimately. So I think my encouragement would be to embrace the difficult work of parsing those three things and figuring out how for your brand to do it, because I do think it will be necessary to thrive if you're a brand now.
Outstanding. Sorry about the hairdryer. I don't have one to lend you.
When you see me tomorrow and my hair looks worse, you didn't see me.
Lea, how about from your point of view? What's something different that brand marketers should be doing going forward?
To Justine's point, again, just make the hard calls as well. It's very, very easy to optimize ourselves into sameness because we got to a point, it's in the data as well in the report where we have, brands are not really that differentiated. So those that actually go back to their ethos, because every brand's different, every vertical is different, every market is different. So understand the market, understand the culture, understand the customer, understand the vertical, and then you can build accordingly. But honestly, test. I keep saying that decades ago we had less tools, but more creative risk. When I started off my career, the amount of creative risk and hunger that I had in those network agencies and the strategy teams, it was powerful. What I'm seeing at the moment is I'm trying to bring people back to this across all my stages of the work we do at Mindscope. I'm just trying to bring this risk, this creativity, this boldness back to the equation because that's what drives change. When you're able to actually, light not fire, no, but light a spark somewhere, and then you get different teams to start this out. But know your vertical, know your market, understand the brand fluency, which is the affinity section in the report that sits across a university, so a universal truth, and then understand your market and build accordingly. Because humans feel it, consumers feel it. People forget I'm a consumer. We're all consumers in this room. We're audiences, we're communities, so it's really about that. A big stat that we spoke about my previous talk, it was we were releasing some work too. I'm so excited for tomorrow's release because I can then say all the stats, but we're keeping it wrapped up, to obviously make sure that it's kind of taken with justice. But a stat was the fact that more than 60% of people engage in private DMs and those more like community-based spaces. People are moving from those performative spaces to more public spaces, private spaces where they can be with their friends, and that's a behavioral theory. That's called a social capital theory. Bridging ties versus bonding ties. You know, social media has trained us to, and the whole ecosystem at the moment, to build bridging ties. We're separate, you know, but at the same time we perform for other people. We're in those public feeds. When you look back, bonding ties, there's a lack of bonding ties right now. So it's all about going back to this. It's about making sure that brands understand where their communities are, leverage their ecosystem in the right way, but also know the gaps, know the pain points that their audiences have, that things are not being rewarded for, and then design accordingly in each vertical, in each market, with a universal truth that sits across it all. Honestly, just understand behavioral science and behavioral economics. It's like a compass amongst all those changes, because human behavior hasn't changed that much. The formats have, the channels have, the way we sometimes communicate has, but our needs, our inherent heuristics and human biases, that haven't changed that much. They haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
I was going to add, so one of the big things that I think we're seeing is like the redistribution of people, you know, so as enterprises are leveraging AI in lots of different ways, it's changing people's roles. And one inspiring story is what IKEA did. I don't know if you saw it, if people saw that in the news, but as they were incorporating AI into their contact centers, it didn't necessitate the need for like thousands of people. And so rather than cut costs, they retrained them to be interior designers and then deployed them out to you and I, so that it removes some of the pain point that we have when we go into an IKEA and feel lost. And I think like that's just a really smart move to really understand who your customer is. What are the pain points? What are the delighters? What makes me feel like I'm a designer? And how can we take the same spend that we had and just redistribute it to where it's at a touch point that I can feel something? And I think those are the smartest brands. What they're doing is not looking at, let's use AI, cut costs, like reshuffle the org and call it a day. It's deploying it to where people are going to feel it. And I think that's the biggest opportunity that we have as companies. I think it's the biggest opportunity we have is creating, not just marketing, but like experiences that people can feel and touch. And that, there might be a Dyson salon that comes to you, but I'll give you yeah.
Pain points solved. I mean, the experience economy is becoming $1 trillion economy. You know, the amount of times where we've got, woo, someone's happy over there. No, it is. I spoke at the World Experience Organization a month ago, and it was all about this. It was honestly all about this, the fact that we can only compound trust in those physical spaces at the moment, and then if you're able to create this hybrid ecosystem, this is where we see brands win. And it's really exciting to see that shift from human insight, human acumen, on to scaling that insight using AI, and that's where the power really lies.
I love that. I could talk about this stuff all afternoon, but I'm sensing our audience might be desiring a run to the bar to get some water and check out the Portraits of Desire. So I want to wrap this up and just ask each of you for one last thought for the audience. What's your advice that you would give on ways going forward that the audience can think about humanizing AI to make a difference?
I think this is a great moment to push back against the sort of stereotype that it's all, hard or soft, data or, loose narratives written by planners like me, that it has to be one or the other. So I think this is a great time to kind of embrace the fact that it is indeed both, and there's a duality of both, and also hydrate and send me to your nearest hair salon.
I love that.
I would just challenge, or just take ideas that you have that might seem absolutely crazy, and just go do them. I think they're, like the inspiration for our company was just this crazy idea of like, how do you interview the world? Yeah. We're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, we locked ourselves in a room and we mapped it out, and it was like, and I think now you can do these things. And so I would just, I know we have a lot of students here. I was just experiment. There are no rules. You almost think like all the corporate people have it figured out. We are creating too.
They pretend they do. They have no idea.
But it's so exciting to see just new thinking, right? New ways to solve problems, new metrics that didn't exist. Because like we all know they don't feel right, but I think you now have the ability to be as bold as you can and actually create them and believe in them.
Love that. Yeah. Lea.
Yeah, to echo Chad, like fortune favors the bold, and everyone's figuring it out as we go, right? Like it's an interesting industry. Again, transformation happens during friction. You need to be brave. You need to test, learn from your mistakes, you know. Go back to the pain points as well. The industry's pain points, the brand leaders' pain points, the customer's pain point. Go back to the pain points and understand the problem and then solve that problem. Don't force a narrative. Be more empathetic, but also, to Justine's point, just to summarize all of it, making sure that you see things as, in behavioral science, there's something called the law of polarity. You know, it shouldn't be that different. Two things can happen at once. Two things can be true. So remember this, build with hard data, but understand that with the soft skills, and make sure that you keep the human first within the equation. When you keep the human first, then the risk, trust me, is minimized because you build for their needs, their pain points, their motivations. And I'm really excited about the new ways to measure things, the new industries that are being created at the moment. And I'm just telling everyone it's a very exciting time to be in our industry. So embrace that transformation. Go ahead and take those risks, test those risks, and make it happen.
Outstanding. Thanks so much. How about a nice round of applause for our panel?
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.